The lack of ethnic presence or the decline of ethnic presence is all across. It's across in Argentina where they speak Hebrew. You go to meeting with Jewish teachers, people who never visited Israel. I went there, 700 teachers. They all wanted me to lecture in Hebrew. They understood Hebrew. Hebrew is the language. Rabbis are coming from abroad, from Israel to the diaspora, rather than the other way around, when it used to be. So like even the ultra-Orthodox, the core of ultra-Orthodox rabbi, which used to be in New York, is now moved to Israel. Jerusalem is the hub of religiosity. I spoke to Robert Putnam because of his book, American Grace. You know, Robert Putnam has this fabulous book, American Grace, that basically try to analyze the evolution of American religion since Will Herberg's book in the 50s, and to see what really happened. And he has this whole very interesting chapter about Jewish Americans. And I said to Putnam when he visited Israel, I said, it's really remarkable. What you describe as Jews in America is nothing the way that Israelis see what Jews. You talk about ethnicity. Israelis, when they talk about Jewish, they talk about religiosity. They talk about the ultra-Orthodox, the nationalist Orthodox. They don't talk in terms of ethnicity anymore. In addition, ethnicity also has been dissipated as a trait of American Jewry or in liberal states. Ethnicity as such, unless you describe it in religiosity like in France. But when you describe it in religiosity like in France, who is in control of it? The CRIF, or the Shas party that sends rabbis, and so on. They are much more sort of like the Ashkenazi kind of like a tradition of French Jewry that used to be prevailing is no longer there. So there is a very interesting phenomena here. Now, when it comes to Israel, of course, there is always, in addition, what we call the political component, which I will not talk much about today. For a long time, as my colleague already, David Vital, wrote about it in the 1980s, if I find his quote, he talked about how Israel has become the civic religion of Jews. The civic religion of Jews, sort of like the Israeli affair has become the civic religion of Jews. They engage with Israel, either by donations to Israel or by concern to Israel's security, or if you look at the organizational design of American Jewry or any other Jews, it's Israeli-centric even when you criticize Israel, notwithstanding. I wrote this piece that called J-Date and J Street, the two pillars of American liberal Judaism. Based on sort of like after Beinart's book about the crisis of Zionism. When he said Jews in America, because of their criticism of Israel, will be forced to check Zionism at the door of their liberalism. And I asked the question, Beinart, say, but what will define their Judaism? And I said, they cannot. They cannot avoid Israel even if they criticize Israel. I go to events, a group called Betzedek and Shalom, which means justice and peace. And I go to the meeting, women who are assembling in Seattle to raise money to evacuate settlers. And I said, why are you doing this? He said, no, this is our Jewish activity. I said, if you wouldn't do that related to Israel, what else would you do? He said, we would look for all kind of circles to assemble. It's very tough to assemble without the case of Israel. And it's becoming tougher and tougher because of issues of assimilation, because of the success of Jews, especially in North America, and because of the difficulties of retaining identity. That's why when you have this amazing program called Birthright Israel, or in Israel they call it in a Hebrew word, Taglit, which is discovery, you have already 300,000 or more young American Jewish kids who come to Israel for 2 weeks as a silver bullet for regaining Jewish identity. These are completely assimilated kind of kids, or kids who have not been affiliated with any synagogues or any Jewish institution. They come to Israel, they go to the Wailing Wall, they go there, they travel, they land, they meet people, they meet soldiers. They kind of become Jewish again in that respect, retaining their Jewishness. So in that respect, what you have is really a phenomena that Israel is very much hovering above the idea of Judaism and becoming kind of almost not dictating, but kind of the key component. No other issue can galvanize Jewish solidarity but Israel. No other issue. Traditional Jewish organization that had debates about Jews as ethnicity, nationalism, or religion, above all, of course, the Reform Jews, let alone organizations like the American Jewish Committee, all of them are uniting about their concern for Israel, and their Judaism is very much influenced by what is happening in Israel, for good or ill. Even if they criticize what is happening, if they criticize what they consider to be the lack of liberal traditions, and therefore they will try to influence Israel to create Israel in their own image, something that forces them to come to Israel and invest. Today, the leading branches of American Jewish identity, conservative Jews and Reform Jews, have their hub in Jerusalem and the president sitting in Jerusalem, because they understand they cannot legitimate themselves here if they don't have access to Israel, because Israel is becoming so powerful. What will unite them here, or what will be the issues that will to coalesce Jewish Americans? This is a very important fact to remember. When you remember all of this, and this, of course, I have only 35 minutes, as Tom said, altogether, it's interesting to see in the end, what does it entail, that the Israelization of American Jewish, or French Jewry, or of German Jews for that matter, that came from Russia. To begin with, you have to remember, the Jews are leaving many countries of domicile. The fact of the matter is that Israel has increased so significantly, 8 million people strong, with over 6 million Jews, about 1.4 million Arabs, and what they say, another 300,000 of non-identified, because these are many of them people who moved to Israel as Jews but did not pass the conversion test. But Jews are moving. Russian Jews have moved. There is no more Russian Jewry in the same manner. Argentinian Jews are not the same as they used to be. And I would say even American Jews, not because of moving to Israel, because of all the other descriptions that I gave you, in terms of their cohesion, in terms of the essence of their activity.